as you know, in Gaza, the Israeli occupying force keep cutting the internet, so we knew we couldn't count on the internet. So Asma, Mustafa, and Mohammed Shuber will providing. We'll be listening to their testimonies. But let me. No sound. Okay. Can you hear us?
Use the microphone. Maha. No, you have to use the microphone.
Okay, can you hear us now? Okay, great. Okay, perfect. So let me just start. I mean, my colleague Rabab will be chairing this session. Rabab, shall I start over to you?
Yeah. Okay. Chairing session talking about teachers' voices, something that silencing voices by talking on behalf of them. First of all, I apologize for speaking not in Arabic. بعتذر للجمهور إنه أنا راح أضطر أحكي باللغة الإنجليزية، ليس يعني تفوقا للغة لكن لأسباب تقنية. Okay, so I apologize for speaking in Arabic, in English. Okay, so just I was asked to have a quick review of the book. As you know, as Palestinian living in Palestine too, this is not the first time we listen to teachers. Okay.
Speak there.
Yes, sorry. So this is not the first time we listen to teachers talking about their experience. However, what was interesting in these contributions is that they really came and the deep feeling of despair, the feeling of what is going on for the future of Palestinian people, wherever they are, even and particularly in Gaza. So as a faculty member at the university and teaching teachers how they should teach and work, this book really challenged me a lot. Challenged me because it gave me a deep view about what I teach for ages about teachers' agency. And when we talk about powerful and talking about how we can move and make meanings of how we teach. So there is a lot to learn from this book, and I encourage you to read it. Because when you read teachers' experiences, it taught us a lot about what we mean by teaching as a human act. So all of those teachers who carried their love to their students, their peers being killed as teachers and their kids, but they kept finding meaning within this injustice world and within the daily death and the uncertainty about the future. So I learned a lot, and I have examples to come back to my students to talk about teaching as an act, a human act. But it's also about telling us a lot about dynamic. You know, there is a lot of theories within these experiences. In one of the stories, teacher and her kids in a refugee school, they decided to teach, to learn. And they knock on the door of Annie, of an elderly woman sitting there and asking about the broken door that she has, if they can use it for teaching. And she was planning to use it to feed her kids by making fire. And she said, education is more important, please use it. So there is a lot to learn from those stories about theories and about what we mean by collective activism and agency. So there is a lot to learn about how people teaching when they are starving. And somehow I felt that it was me who is starving because they have such rich mind that they filled it with hope and ideas that even I wouldn't, or any person that I know, believe that teaching is something very important. If whether we can confront this reality with this love and hope and believe that with this mess, I can only sit aside, but they decided to make something for the kids who are around them. Even those teachers who were forced to leave their homes and to work with children that they don't know, they insisted to build this relationship. So there is a lot to learn as academics and researchers about what it means here in practice. We also learn a lot about, or I was challenged on the other side about really, if this is what we talk always, that from emancipatory perspective, that education theories are, came from practice, why we still disconnect ourselves? And this is what Maha mentioned in her introduction of the book, why we still, as academics and researchers, cannot free our mind from this theory, recipe-oriented, how we were educated and how we, from the places we got our education, where we have to follow the recipe. But those teachers were rebellious. They didn't follow any text. They follow the needs. So I wonder whether this book will also open the gates for future interactions and thinking about how we also learn that acting with this freedom, can we also think with less dependency on the ready theories that somehow were a little bit strange in this book. Because for one example, I was wondering, will teacher who's receiving this UNICEF and Save the Children with all the respect of the international organization that working in Palestine, when you give them this guidance, how to work with children facing psychological and mental difficulties, will a comment saying, listen to children, lay on the floor, plant something with them, what it brings in the mind of the teacher who's totally irrelevant. Maybe they will make these brochures something to use for their creative arts with kids. So maybe it's time that to start to minimize this gap between those who are calling for research, for emancipation, learning from the practices that it come, and that those teachers will teach academia how to develop theories. So thank you, and I hope that the book will reach more discussion. And I will, as chairing this place, before preparing the scenario videos, I would like to ask Samia to, and I'm sorry for crossing the time, and we will control it. Thank you.
Hello. Ladies and gentlemen, esteemed guests, I am honored to be with you today to celebrate the launch of Education in Times of War, an Act of Life, a book that not only carries voices and stories of resilience, but also stands as a powerful testament to the enduring strength of education, even in the darkest of times. This journey began with a special issue of Manhajiyat, dedicated entirely to exploring and documenting how learning endures amid conflict, displacement, and profound uncertainty. This issue inspired dialogue and reflection, and it highlighted our shared commitment to understanding the critical role of education in times of war. Today, our journey culminates in this book, a lasting tribute to those efforts and to the stories that must never be forgotten. Allow me to introduce Manhajiyat, an interactive educational magazine. Stories of success and hardship of learning and development fill our sphere in the Arab world and beyond. It is through these live experiences that we learn and grow as individuals and as community, both locally and globally. driven by both curiosity and deep sense of responsibility to our region. We found ourselves engaged in cultural dialogue, reflecting on our shared aspiration for learning and transformation. From this collective inner rooted in cultural tools and evolving educational needs of our region. And it is now embedded in our Manhajiyat initiative, an initiative grounded in conversations, critical reflections, and imagination. The inception of Manhajiyat was rooted in an idea born at the intersection of life experience, collaboration, and active engagement. It emerged carrying fragments of love, hope, and trust. Today, we celebrate that idea through vibrant Arabic educational platform that amplifies the voices of Arab teachers, co-created with and for teachers across the Arab world. This platform documents the learning and stories they share, stories of their educational realities and aspiration within diverse cultural, social, and intellectual contexts. We recognize the vision is ambitious, but the aim is clear: to empower teachers to be agents of transformation within a dynamic community. The story of Manhajiyat lives on, and we hope will continue to amplify the voices of our teachers for generations to come. Education in Times of War, an Act of Life. This book launched today is the result of meaningful collaboration between Manhajiyat and Center for Lebanese Studies. It aims to amplify the voices of teachers who are educating children in times of war. The articles were first published in Arabic as part of Manhajiyat's 16 issue, titled Teaching During War. The first 5 contributions appeared on Gaza blog, posted on Manhajiyat website. The Gaza blog was launched on the 24th day of Israeli relentless bombardment of Gaza, a small strip of land and home to over 2 million people, destroying their homes, hospitals, schools, and places of worship. On that day, Manhajiyat issued a call for teachers and educators in Gaza to write, to share, to reflect, and to speak, to break the silence, and to document reality of education under siege and bombardment. Through their testimonies, we gain critical insight into what it means to teach and to care, to resist in the face of devastation, what we Palestinians would call sumud, steadfastness. At Manhajiyat, we believe that the foundation of education is rooted in core values: truth, justice, dignity, freedom, the right to think, and the right to be treated equally. What greater violation of these values could there be than what we have witnessed for over a year now, almost 2 years? The work we do not be possible without the incredible support, trust, and dedication of our partners. To each of you, thank you. Your belief in the urgency and significance of this project, your tireless collaboration, and your unwavering commitment have brought this vision to life. Together, we have created something we hope will inspire, inform, and ignite action for years to come. Education in time of war, an act of life, is more than a book. It is a declaration. Education is not a luxury, it is a lifeline. It does not end when the world collapses around us. It continues because hope continues. Through these pages, we honor the teachers, the students, and the communities who have shown us the true meaning of courage, resilience, and above all, humanity. Thank you again for being here today.
So I'm just, for those of you asking where the book is, unfortunately, because of the interruption of flights in the past few days from Lebanon to the UK, we couldn't have a hard copy. It's available online. You can easily download it. And if we have your email, we can share it at the end of the event. It's in Arabic and in English. What does education become when schools are reduced to mass graves, when classrooms exist as fragments in the rubble, when teachers must not be educators but shields against despair, architects of hope in a world intent on their erasure? This book is an act of witness, a refusal to silence. It gathers the voices of educators in occupied Palestine, particularly in Gaza under siege, in the West Bank, and in Lebanon under continuous attacks. For the past 20 years, the field of education in conflict and post-conflict has rapidly expanded, shaped by relentless churn of global wars and humanitarian crises. Yet its growth has been dictated by the priorities of donors, the technical technocrats, and the logic of liberal peace building, a framework more concerned with the stability than justice, with management rather than liberation. Under the banner of neutrality, it has reduced education to technical interventions, a delivery of services measured in toolkit, standardized curriculum, and minimum standard. It speaks of resilience while ignoring the structures that force communities to be resilient in the first place, speaking back to your point earlier. It promotes peace education while sidestepping the occupation, the apartheid, and the genocide that make peace impossible. The machinery of the system is vast and self-sustaining. International NGOs, UN agencies, and research institutions have largely headquartered in the Global North, design programs, allocate funds, and produce knowledge with little accountability to the communities they claim to serve. Local organizations, once rooted in grassroots resistance, are transformed into service providers and subcontractors for large NGOs. And this follows a study that actually we have documented in Lebanon, Jordan, and Palestine into how the role of civil society has changed in the past 20 years. We simply asked them, what is your approach to change and reform? They didn't have an answer. They were mainly providing services for the large NGOs. And then came Gaza. In the face of a live stream genocide, the entire infrastructure of education in conflict revealed its hollowness. Humanitarian agencies, petrified by the risk of losing funding, hesitated to name the slaughter. UNRWA, the backbone of Palestinian education, was defunded, demonized, and its schools were bombed and its staff systematically killed. Networks that claimed to represent educational and academic communities choked on their own silence, unable even to mourn their own colleagues. The myth of neutrality collapsed under the weight of its own hypocrisy, exposing a truth long known but rarely spoken, that this system was never neutral. It was built by the same powers that arm the oppressor, that veto ceasefires, that turn classrooms into targets. Academia too stood complicit. Scholars who built careers studying Palestine and Lebanon suddenly had nothing to say. Universities under pressure from donors and governments, silent dissent. Research ethics, narrowly defined by institutional review boards, became a shield of cowardice, as if ethics ended with data collection and did not extend to solidarity with the people who were suffering, filled field notes and funded grants. Suddenly, academia went back to the age of positivism and the distant and disconnected role scholars must have towards the subject of study, thus lying bare its moral bankruptcy. I want to finish with a quote from one of the teachers. The children in Gaza don't need these education programs to teach them about justice. They live it in the absence of justice. They don't need trauma interventions to name their pain. They need the world to stop inflicting it and asking them to die quietly. I hope through this book, you will be able to read the testimonies of teachers who are going day to day trying to bring hope into these people, some of whom died, killed, and some of these teachers are also, unfortunately, at a very high risk. We'll move now to the
السيدات والسادة الكرام، السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته من قلب غزة ومن تحت ركام المدارس والبيوت من وسط خيامنا التعليمية. جئت أحمل إليكم صوتا لم يقصف بعد، صوت التعليم، صوت الحياة وسط القصف والموت اليومي. اخترت أن أكتب لا لأوثق المأساة فقط، بل لأبقي شعلة الحياة متقدة في عيون أطفالنا، ولأذكر العالم أجمع أن هناك شعبا لم يمحى صوته رغم كل محاولات الإبادة الوحشية. حين وصلتني رسالة من مجلة منهجيات نحو تعليم معاصر في أول أسبوعين من حرب الإبادة، شعرت أنها لم تكن مجرد دعوة للكتابة أو رسالة عابرة، بل كانت نداء لإحياء من جديد عبر منصة التعليم، صوتي ومنبري الحر كما دائما أقول. استطعت من خلال منهجيات أن أوصل للعالم معاناة أكثر من 600 ألف طفل فلسطيني يحرموا من حقهم في التعليم بالكامل لعامين كاملين. نعم، في القرن 21 فقط في غزة سجلت نسبة الفاقد التعليمي 100%، واستشهاد أكثر من 18 ألف طالب لم يحرموا فقط حقهم في التعليم، بل حرموا من حقهم في الحياة. أن تكون معلم في غزة ليست مجرد وظيفة، بل شرف ومسؤولية. نحن لا ندرس فقط، نحن نضمد جراح أطفالنا، نزرع الحلم وسط الدمار، ونعيد بناء الروح تحت الأنقاض ووسط الخيام التعليمية، وسط في مراكز الإيواء ومقرات النزوح. التعليم في غزة هو شكل من أشكال الصمود والمقاومة، ومصدر للكرامة وجسر نحو الأمل. أنا أؤمن أن القلم أقوى من الرصاصة، لأن العلم الذي يمنح أطفالنا الوعي والكرامة والقدرة على الدفاع عن حقوقهم بسلام. بالعلم نبني جيلا لا يقاد بل يقود، وجيلا يحرر وطنه من الجهل كما من الاحتلال. لكن دعوني أقولها بوضوح، الحق في التعليم في غزة منتهك بالكامل، لا مدارس ولا أمان ولا موارد. الأطفال مشردون، الأطفال يعيشون رعبا هائلا، محرومين من أبسط حقوقهم. نحن نعيش كارثة إنسانية وتعليمية مزدوجة. المدارس تحولت أولا إلى ملاجئ، الملاجئ قصفت وتحولت إلى ركام، المعلمين ما بين شهداء ومصابين ونازحين وأنا منهم، والأطفال فقدوا أصدقائهم، فقدوا منازلهم، فقدوا أحلامهم، وكان شيئا في غاية الوحشية، وكأن هناك من قرر أن يمحي جيلا بأكمله. في 8 مراكز نزوح مختلفة اجتمع الأطفال حولي، ما يقارب أكثر من 2000 طفل. لم يكن لدي كتب ولا مقاعد ولا قصص، ولم يكن لدي قلم حتى، لكن كان لدي إيمان. آمنت بهؤلاء الأطفال، درستهم القيم، المبادئ، المهارات الحياتية. كنت كل يوم تمام الساعة 3 عصرا أروي لهم حكاية، نغني ونرسم، نلون ونلعب ونحلم جميعا بصوت عالي، نبتعد قليلا عن أجواء القصف والخوف والموت والجوع والتجويع الممنهج. طائرات الموت كانت تحاصرني وتحاصر أطفالي من كل مكان، لكنها لم تستطع أن تصادر صوت الضحكة أو تطفئ شغف المعرفة. كنت أمشي ساعة ونصف كل يوم مشي على الأقدام فقط لأجل اتصال بالإنترنت، من أجل أن أستطيع إرسال قصة أطفالي أو درس اليوم أو حكاية أو رؤية تعليمية إلى مجلة منهجيات التي تستطيع إيصال صوتي إلى العالم. أطفالي يرسلون إلى العالم رسالة واحدة، كتبتها مرارا وقلتها مرارا كثيرا. نريد أن نصحو على صوت جرس الحصة الأولى، لا على صوت القصف. نريد أن نملأ دفاترنا بكلمات الأمل والحب والسلام، لا لأن نحرقها لإشعال نار الطهي. نريد أن نحلم، أن نبدع، أن نعيش طفولتنا كما ينبغي، كما بقية أطفال العالم، لا لأن نختبئ من الموت في كل لحظة ونهرب منه في كل نزوح. أوقفوا حرب الإبادة الجماعية على غزة، أوقفوا حرب التجهيل وإبادة التعليم، أعيدوا الطفل الغزي إلى مقعد الدراسة حيث يجب أن يكون. فالتعليم ليست رفاهية، بل هو حق، وهو الحق الذي يولد منه كل حلم بالحرية والسلام. شكرا لكم.
الزملاء الأعزاء، تحية طيبة لكم، كل باسمه ولقبه ومكانته، وكلكم أصحاب مكانة كبيرة في قلوبنا. تحية محبة لكم جميعا، وأسعد الله أوقاتكم جميعا. محدثكم دكتور محمد عوض شبير، غزة فلسطين. بداية أتقدم لكم جميعا بالشكر على تنظيم هذه الفعالية، وأخص بالشكر مجلة منهجيات التربوية بخالص الشكر لهذه المجلة، والتي وجدنا فيها فضاء تعليميا وتربويا لكتابة حروفنا وصناعة بصماتنا وإيصال صوتنا عبر صفحات هذه المجلة الرائدة. فالشكر لهم على كل ما يقدمونه من أجل خدمة الحق في التعليم، وتحديدا خدمة أبنائنا الطلبة في فلسطين عبر إيصال صوتنا وإظهار ما نحتاجه في العملية التعليمية. وشكر أيضا لمؤسسة الدراسات اللبنانية على تنظيم هذه الفعالية، هذا وإن يدل على حرصهم الكبير على خدمة الإنسانية أولا، واستشعارا بمسؤوليتهم المجتمعية تجاه الإنسان أولا والطلبة والتعليم ثانيا، واستشعارا أيضا بدورهم الكبير تجاه الإبادة التي يتعرض لها الشعب الفلسطيني، وتحديدا الحق في التعليم عبر إظهار إيصال صوت التعليم في فلسطين لكل المؤسسات والمحافل الدولية، ويقول للعالم رسالة مفادها أن هناك طلبة وأطفال فلسطينيين من حقهم العيش ومن حقهم أن يتعلموا كبقية أطفال العالم. أتحدث إليكم من وسط النزوح ومن وسط القهر والمعاناة والتهجير والألم والقصف والإبادة والكارثة التي لم تتوقف على مدار عامين كاملين. سررت كثيرا وسعدت عندما وصلتني رسالة من منهجيات بأن المقالين الذي أرسلتهم لهذه المجلة تم ترجمتهم وسيتم عرضهم في الفعالية التي سيتم تنظيمها. هذه المقالات التي كتبتها بقلمي، ويعلم الجميع بأننا في غزة لم يعد لدينا سلاح لإيصال أصواتنا سوى القلم وكتابة حروفنا للعالم. كتبت هذا مقال مصطلحات جديدة تقتحم عقول الطلبة الفلسطينيين. وأنا كنت في مخيم النزوح الذي أسكن فيه، وعندما سمعت أحد الأطفال ولم يتجاوز عمر 5 سنوات يقول لأخته يهرب من صوت القصف الشديد، يقول لها حزام ناري، استفزني هذا المصطلح، وقلت كيف لهذا الطفل أن يعلم هذا المصطلح الكبير جدا على هذه العقلية الفلسطينية. ولكني أصررت كثيرا على أن أجمع هذه المصطلحات وأرى كيف أعمل تشخيص ومسح لواقع هذه المصطلحات، ومن ثم تقديمها عبر صفحات مجلة منهجيات للعالم ليرى الجميع ويسمع ويشاهد ماذا يدور على ألسنة هؤلاء الأطفال. ثم انتقلت إلى كتابة المقالة الثانية، وهي مقالة بعنوان إذا توقف التعليم يجب ألا يتوقف التعلم، وهي أيضا مقالة أصررت في كتابتها على أننا رغم تدمير المدارس وإغلاق المدارس وتوقف المدارس، إلا أن هناك نشأ لدينا في غزة مدرسة الحرب، وهذه المدرسة لها مساراتها وسياقاتها المختلفة. تعلم الأطفال في هذه المدرسة الكثير من المهارات الحياتية والمهارات في الرياضيات واللغة العربية واللغة الإنجليزية وحتى اللغة العبرية كمصطلحات عسكرية يتم تداولها. كل هذه المصطلحات تعلمها الأطفال خارج أسوار المدرسة، لأن المدرسة الحقيقية دمرت وتحولت المدرسة المدمر جزئيا إلى مركز لإيواء النازحين، وبالتالي بقي الأطفال في وسط الشارع. ومن ثم لم يعد أمام الطلبة إلا أن يتعلموا من مدرسة الحرب من خلال المجاورة والمحاورة والاحتكاك بالزملاء الجدد والأصدقاء والأقارب والأهالي، ووقوفهم في طوابير المياه وطوابير الحصة الغذائية. أكسب هؤلاء الأطفال رغم عمرهم الصغير معلومات وسياقات تعليمية جديدة. كتبت هذه المقالين وكانت فوق رأسي طائرات الاستطلاع والزوارق الحربية لم تتركنا وتقصف ليل نهار، والدبابات على مقربة منا، وكذلك انقطاع للتيار الكهربائي وانقطاع لظروف الانترنت، حيث اضطررت للذهاب من محافظة خان يونس إلى محافظة رفح لإرسال هذه المقال لوجود انترنت في مدينة رفح، ولم يكن موجود هذا الانترنت في محافظة خان يونس التي أقطن فيها. أما بخصوص موضوع التعليم في زمن الإبادة، أحدثكم بمرارة كبيرة بأن التعليم في غزة تحديدا تعرض لإبادة وكارثة شاملة. قتل فيها المعلم والمتعلم، وخسرنا فيها 17,000 طالب، وخسرنا فيها 7,000 معلم ومعلمة، وحرم 700,000 طالب من العملية التعليمية للعام الدراسي الثاني على التوالي، وبالتالي تعاظم الفاقد التعليمي عند هؤلاء الطلبة. إلا أنه ما زال يحدون الأمل ونبني السلام والأمل في نفوس أطفالنا. نشأت مدارس داخل مخيمات النزوح، في الخيام التعليمية، في ملتقيات التعليمية، في المساحات التعليمية، عبر المدارس النهارية والأسرية ودواوين العائلات. نشأت مدارس عبر المتطوعين والخريجين وأولياء الأمور. هذه المدارس ندعمها ونقف إلى جانب هؤلاء المعلمين ونبني الأمل في نفوس الطلبة لكي يبقى التعليم قائما وممكنا ومستداما ومتاحا للجميع عبر تمكين الطلبة وتعزيز صمودهم ليحصلوا على حقهم في التعليم، ويبقى التعليم حاضرا وممكنا ومستداما في الطلبة، ولن نترك أحد خلف الركب. نأمل في لحظة أمان وسلام يعيشها الطالب والمعلم، ويأمل طلبتنا في رسالتهم الأخيرة عبر مؤسستكم وعبر هذه الفعالية بأن يصل صوتنا إلى الجميع، وتبقى غزة بطلابها الشهيدة والشاهدة على هذا الأمر، وتوصل إليكم رسالة بأن تحملوا معاناة غزة لتوصلوها إلى هذا العالم. شكرا لكم والتحية والسلام لكم من خيمة نزوحي. أحدثكم شكر حتى تسجيل هذا الفيديو في معاناة شديدة في إيصال الإنترنت والحصول على جوال والحصول على كهرباء لشحن هذا الجوال وإيصال وإرسال هذا المقطع. رغم المعاناة أشكركم وأحيي فيكم هذا الحس الإنساني. شكرا لكم وتحية لكم، محدثكم وزميلكم دكتور محمد عوض شبير، والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله.
لا ما يصير.
طيب Manar mentioned, yes, so Manar, she can
Marhaba.
speak to us immediately. Because
Hello,
she's
everyone.
okay, Manar.
Can you hear me well?
Hello.
Should I start sharing my screen?
Yes, you can.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. Just a second. Hello, everyone. My name is Manar Zraiy. I'm a teacher from Gaza. I lived there my entire life, and I spent over a decade working with children in education. And
Can you
صوت منار.
صوتك?
Good, and then it
واضح ولا في مشكلة؟
now
ممتاز.
Okay. I'll just raise my voice. My name is Manar Zraiy. I'm a teacher from Gaza, where I've spent over a decade working in education and youth empowerment, including with multiple organizations, including UNRWA and many grassroots initiatives focused on human rights, resilience, and education. I apologize for not being able to join you in person. I was rejected a visa. It was not an accident, in my opinion. I'd say it was not an administrative delay as well. It was part of a much deeper, older truth. The world is still not ready to receive the Palestinian body without suspicion, without restriction, and without refusal. For you see, I miraculously escaped the war. However, my son, who was born in the period of the war, wasn't. He had to experience genocide and erasure from afar. He was issued a zero ID because Israel still retains control over the Palestinian civil registry, and they refuse to issue any child born outside the Palestinian territory a Palestinian ID. Hence, it was enough pretext for, I think, the government to reject our visa. However, I do not want to drift away from my main presentation. Today, I join you with a story born from one of the darkest times, darkest periods that Gaza has ever faced. Shortly after arriving in London School. Okay, so I shouldn't move too much. Okay, I'll try not to.
Okay, done.
Oh, it's all right. Just let me know when I cut off. It's probably the Wi-Fi. Should I continue?
Yes, please.
Okay. Shortly after arriving at the London School of Economics for a fellowship, a war erupted in Gaza. And for the first time, I had to experience this war from afar. I was unable to teach, unable to be around my family and my students. Weeks have passed without any phone calls or internet. The silence was suffocating. It was a cycle of grief as news arrived of loss after loss. One particular loss has touched me personally. As an educator, as one of my students, the first one of my students to get killed in the war. She was killed along with her entire family. As I researched for more answers, I discovered more students were killed. More of my students were killed in the war, but their names did not reach the news. This painful disconnection raised the critical question that became the heart of my article. How will our students tell us that they are okay this time? To further understand this, we must first look back at previous wars and previous emergencies where we had more ways to connect and more ways to hear from our students and their families. There was a network of communication, both formal and informal, human communication, that allowed us to know how they were doing or whether they were holding on. So before I share how this war changed everything for us, let me just take you through how our students used to tell us that they were doing okay. During previous wars and emergencies, our communication and support systems were robust despite the circumstances. We relied heavily on communication channels such as WhatsApp groups. We had a central Facebook page where the school administration used to broadcast news about online learning, share instructions about handling bombs, displacement, trauma, guidance to the parents for using our online learning platforms, as well as for the students themselves. We also relied on using traditional phone messages. They remained vital for reaching our students who did not have internet access at the time. Our school strength came from a deep social and professional network that we had cultivated over the time, from parents' council to our community leaders, like the Mukhtar of the family or the Sheikh of the family. We also tapped into our teachers' personal networks as well. So in Gaza, we're a tightly knit community. Neighbors, families, friends, this reinforced the support system that we created for our students. Practically, this meant that students who had online access received timely learning updates, emotional support, while the school kept records of enrollment, students' well-being, how the war impacted the students as well and their families. Beyond these administrative functions, there was a powerful human connection. Students would send us hundreds of messages asking how we were doing, when we will go back to school, when they are going to see us. To deepen this connection and help students stay engaged, we initiated activities in collaboration with the Students' Parliament, because we wanted them to be partners in this process as well, and various other school clubs. These, for example, the Science Club produced an educational video, a few educational videos and games. The Health Club created health guidance content. The Art Club shared drawings, expressive artwork. Some students even made TikToks at the time. While participation was voluntary, engagement was incredibly high, and these activities became a crucial way for us to know and ensure that the students are doing okay and they are still on the same wavelength as we were. I'm going to show you a sample of some of the things that we used to publish on our Facebook group. Here, how to deal with bombings, what to do or not to do, some guidance on how to deal with children when they hear bombings, or in emergencies in general. We also had an excellent activity. One activity that I would like to highlight in this slide is the Tell Us, that you are okay activity. In this activity, we asked the students to share anything that tells us that they were doing okay. It wasn't about schoolwork, it wasn't about grades, it was about connection. It was just a simple, open invitation for the students and their families to just reach out when they can, just tell us that anything they wanted. They shared drawings, short poems, some of them shared a voice note, a dish that they had cooked with the family at the time. Some of them just responded with a heart, a smiley face, etc. Each response to me personally and everyone who was working within this activity meant that this person is alive, they are surviving, and they are still human, you know? Every response was overwhelming. Even the students who hadn't participated, who probably did something creative at home, did not have something to do at home. They just wanted to get creative and do something and share. They had a reason. They wanted to tell us about it. They wanted to be seen. They wanted to be connected. Some commented publicly on the school Facebook page, but most just sent us private messages sharing, what they are doing and how they are holding on. We replied to all of them. We showed them support. We validated their emotions. We encouraged them to keep expressing themselves. And when someone shared something more serious, signs of grief, fear, trauma, we referred them immediately to professional support. We made sure they weren't left alone in their silence. Some of our students sent us creative writings or art. We shared all of them. At the end of the day, there was a general message, this message that we are Palestinians, we're still here, the war did not erase us, and one day peace will return and we will rise with it like a phoenix. It was incredibly moving, especially for a big school like mine. We had around 1,300 students. And for me, it was a responsibility. It was overwhelming, but I wanted to carry this responsibility. I wanted to continue allowing the students to have that space. Here are some samples of the artwork that my students sent and some of the videos. Here are some of the comments that they have shared on our organizing group with most of the students who participated in coming up with the ideas. For example, I'll read quickly one of them. It was really nice that the teachers sent us activities to keep us busy and distract us from the war. It helps us reduce the fear and psychological pressure. These messages were from the last conflict before the current one. And they are, as I was trying to research them for the article, it was completely overwhelming because at that time, I didn't have access to my students. So I was very much worried that these were probably the only words I have that they have shared with me. So that brings me to my next slide, why they couldn't tell us this in the current war. Everything, obviously, the scale of death, injury, displacement was unprecedented, unimaginable. The destruction was compounded by unapologetic racism, explicit call for genocide. Basic necessities like food, fuel, water, and electricity were completely cut off, while the territory was sealed under total closures. Hospitals, schools, essential infrastructure was missing. The very threads holding our social fabric together were severed. The population became trapped in a confined area, pushed into survival mode, traumatized, struggling to simply stay alive. Overhead, there were drones constantly hovering, collecting intelligence, firing missiles, increasing the fear. As this time passed, this extreme devastation became the new normal. People had to accept survival. This brutal reality, it made it very much impossible for us to maintain communication or our communication channels, even our community networks. I could barely get in touch with my family, let alone get in touch with my students. So whatever engagement methods or community networks that once connected us with our students, they were not there anymore. Despite these relentless attacks, at some point, we managed to connect with our students again. Even despite direct attacks on telecommunication infrastructure itself and the tragic loss of hundreds of telecommunication workers, local companies, they managed to repair parts of the network. Phones started reconnecting again. The internet access returned gradually in certain places like the supermarkets, some school shelters, some medical points, some international organizations' office. This gave rise to a phenomenon called the street internet, where the families just buy a small card for, I don't know, probably 50 cents. And they connected to the internet. It was extremely fragile. The connection was extremely weak, but somehow it was a way, an entrance towards resuming our educational activities. So we saw a lot of educational efforts starting to re-emerge about 5 months after the war began. Initially, they were just Quran recitations, memorizations. Over the internet, people just collectively advertised these circles. But over time, they developed into informal educational initiatives, held outdoors, held online, in school shelters, in tents. These initiatives, they aimed primarily to give children some meaningful activity to do, some social interaction, rather than just letting them wait passively for death. After a year, almost a year after the war started, formal education slowly resumed. The West Bank Ministry of Education launched a virtual school. Around 90,000 participants logged in, and they have started learning. In early 2025, 1.5 years into the conflict, UNRWA introduced a formal online learning process with low-tech tools like WhatsApp groups, learning cards, weekly quizzes. In my area, in Deir al-Balah, enrollment was significant because Deir al-Balah is one of the remaining cities in Gaza, and it is a designated safe area by the Israeli military. Participation is approximately 70%, but in other areas, it's close to zero, and some of the better ones was 30% engagement. Face-to-face education also gained momentum when UNICEF began supporting grassroots educational initiatives. They were officially recognized as educational spaces. The Gaza Ministry of Education oversees some of those spaces. They provide guidelines on the curricula. They provide guidelines on teaching methods, some supervision, visits, and possibly student certification, but that was in progress. Currently, UNRWA operates a similar informal face-to-face learning space, but with limited number of students. After unimaginable hardships, we finally had ways to reach out to our students again, to check if they were doing okay. Unfortunately, when we connected, they told us that they were not doing okay. The human cost is staggering. In my own school, located, as I mentioned earlier, in the safe area, we lost 17 of our students and 1 teacher. The number is a fraction compared to some other schools in more heavily bombarded areas. Countless others were injured, displaced, they lost family. Basic necessities such as water, food, medication, housing, clothing, even safety became a daily struggle. Children want to continue learning, but their motivation is not the joy of knowledge. It's primarily fear of being held back or failing to progress to another grade. For many, some of the face-to-face classes is an opportunity for them to get some sort of normalcy, a break from waiting in queues for water or for food. Some students even attend because a few of the educational spaces, they offer biscuits or supported food that is probably the only thing that they have had the entire day. I've heard about students walking for hours just to reach an internet point where they can download learning materials. Tragically, we have lost lives on the way. Some of these children lost their lives on their way home. Maybe they left some of the families that they have left behind. Some of them live with permanent disabilities. They are orphaned or carry deep psychological trauma. Some students managed to flee Gaza. They now struggle in exile. They are struggling to learn foreign languages, to adapt to new environments, or even access basic services in host countries that are often less prepared to support them. This is the reality. This is how our students are doing. They are no longer just children in a classroom, but they are survivors trying to hold on to their education, dignity amid unimaginable hardship. I recently spoke with Lana, one of my students, who shared how her typical day looks amid the ongoing crisis. Her mornings begin with collecting water from a nearby well, a critical and exhausting task given the scarcity. She also gathers wood, since almost everything is, has been burned to prepare food, including furniture and clothing. These daily chores are essential for her and her family's survival. At noon, she helps her mother prepare the food. And in the afternoon, she tries to continue her education by memorizing the Quran or logging into the internet to download some of the educational cards and study them. In the evening, it's her turn on a shared smartphone to access those learning cards and present her teachers with her schoolwork. And again, this is a shared smartphone because not all families or all members of the families or all students have their own phone. Learn as they encapsulates the harsh realities that many children in Gaza live, balancing survival and the desperate need to continue learning amid destruction. To conclude my presentation, I'm going to share with you Lana's wish. Lana says, and these are her words, I left them unedited. I wish the war would stop. Maybe other students have bigger dreams. Maybe they are even more talented than I am. But for me, I just want the war to end. I don't even wish for something better. I just wish things would go back to how they used to be. I want to return to the life I had before the war. We had a routine. We went to school. We studied. We had exams. I remember when we used to have exams, I would go home from school and study until bedtime. Then the next morning, I would wake up early and revise again and go take the exam and do really well. But now during online learning, even when you say we have an upcoming exam, I do not feel like studying at home. I open my notes, skim through them, close them, and that's it. The next day, I take the exam, the online exam that is, with no real motivation. Whatever score I get doesn't matter. I just do the exam because I have to. The result doesn't feel important anymore. What can we do for these children? Now that we have learned that they're not okay, we cannot just simply return back to business as usual and offer empty words. Their voices compel us to act with urgency, with humility. First, education in Gaza or anywhere else in conflict cannot be separated from the broader realities of violence, displacement, systemic injustice, settler colonialism. Advocacy for peace, human rights, and dignity is not a side issue. It is foundational to solving or to helping them solve their issues. Without peace, education remains fragile and uncertain endeavor. We must center the voices of students and educators themselves. They hold critical insights on what works, what hurts, and what they truly need. Our policies, programs must be shaped by the lived realities, by the lived experiences of these educators and students. We also need to support flexible, trauma-informed approaches that recognize emotional and social toll that conflicts take on children and educators. This means adapting curricula, teaching methods, and schedules to be responsive and humane. Backing local initiatives and community-led educational spaces is key. These efforts are grounded in context, culturally sensitive, and often the most trusted by families. Finally, we must remember that prioritizing well-being is as important as academic progress. Children cannot learn effectively when basic needs like food, safety, emotional security are not met. This is how we can move forward, listening deeply, responding compassionately, and working collaboratively to sustain education and crisis. I hope I didn't go too much over my time slot. Thank you so much for listening. I look forward to your questions.
The video has ended, so over to you, Maha.
Here, can they hear from here? Yeah,
Yes.
they can hear.
I just wanted to know what kind of learning do the students in Gaza need that could be placed within the context of their lives at the moment? For someone in the UK, obviously their day-to-day is very alien to us. We have no idea what they're going through. So if we want to support education in Gaza? What should we know to be able to make that learning relevant for them in their current situation without perhaps kind of indulging the idea of their trauma and maybe making them sort of like two-dimensional characters as students by just focusing on trauma? Does that make sense?
منار وأسماء عم تسمعونا؟ سمعتوا السؤال؟
I'm sorry, at first the audio was not connected well. If you could please repeat the question. Sorry.
Maybe.
Shall I come to the microphone?
Maybe you can ask, speak from here.
No, you're okay. You don't need to use the microphone. I just skipped the first part because the audio was disconnected.
Oh.
Yes.
The first part of the question.
Hello, sorry, I just wanted to, so my name is Jonathan Well, I'm a postdoctoral researcher at King's College London. I just wanted to know what, from the perspective of someone in the UK or outside of Gaza who is not familiar with the context of the students' learning and perhaps doesn't have much way of understanding that, what should we know about that? What should we know about how to place learning in the context of their lives so that they can relate more to any kind of projects that we support, or if we're doing any kind of distance teaching? Does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely. I have been monitoring what the teachers on the ground have been doing so far. And from what I saw, a lot of the students, they feel the most connected to their own teachers who they used to have back in their schools before the war began. This is my personal opinion. I think more support should be directed towards empowering school administrations, school leaders, and educators who are currently, drifting away from their responsibilities as teachers because there aren't any schools anymore, and empower organizations that work directly with existing teachers and existing educational institutions in Gaza. I understand there's a lot of politics around UNRWA, for example, UNRWA's education system, education program, as well as Gaza's Ministry of Education, because Gaza's Ministry of Education is a government establishment and it follows the government that controls the Gaza Strip. So for a lot of people outside the Gaza Strip might be in trouble engaging with some of these organizations. I do not have a complete answer for the question. However, I do believe strongly in empowering individual educators who are working currently in Gaza, supporting them mainly by providing knowledge and providing them opportunities to further help the students. The teachers do not lack knowledge, just to clarify, in Gaza. They do not lack knowledge. They are the ones that the entire world should be learning from, honestly, because they are on the ground. They know how to work with the children and they know what works and what doesn't work for them. So my idea is to just, in my opinion, to just expand the space, the visibility for educators and educational organizations working in Gaza and try to support them in the ways that these educators think are important or are possible. So this is my answer. I hope maybe Asma has another answer.
Yes.
شكرا منار.
عشان أسماء نستغل إنه تشاركي عني.
سامعين بس أنت ميوت. أسماء.
يعطيكم العافية.
هلا فيكي.
يعطيكم العافية. I'm so pleased to be among you. I am from Gaza, and I'd like to thank the one who asked this question. Actually, there is much to do for the children of Gaza to continue or to keep them continue in learning. First of all, you can support education and focused charities working in Gaza. For example, some NGOs and the charitable organizations have direct access and experience working with the Gazan education sectors, like UNICEF, like Al-Qattan Foundation, and many other local and international organizations which reach directly to the children of Gaza, to the groups of leaders of education, to the initiative teachers, to the centers of education that we have created in the displacement camps and in shelters, especially the UNRWA schools, which are now dedicated for the displaced families. And they contain thousands of displaced children. And you can also fund laptops, books, and some small books, digital access for the students. Even small fundraising efforts for a local event, online school project, or can go towards education in Gaza Strip, which now almost off of education for almost 2 years. And the children of Gaza need this very much. Volunteer, you can also volunteer or collaborate remotely with the children of Gaza. If you are a teacher or a student, a university student, or you are an artist, a storyteller, conversation session, or you can do a storytelling, a drama, a creative writing workshops with your students in UK or in other country you are in, with the children of Gaza, like a global internet, global educational projects. Exactly what I remember, that the Hands Up project, which is launched from London, which is launched for many years, and it is achieving a great result. You can also raise awareness and amplify voices of education, host events or schools or university about Gaza education crisis. You can also invite speakers of Palestinian educators to share experiences, to support Palestinian authors, the voices of youth voices through social media, blogs, or even you can share in podcasts. Education is a global solidarity. It's not only about donation. You can also push for policy change from your country. Children in Gaza suffer because of political decisions. Yeah, it's a bomb. And blockades, bombing of the schools and the restrictions. You can raise your voice, contact and support policies for ceasefire and access to education. You can time for protecting schools in conflict zones, like in the Israeli army has divided Gaza into blocks which contain numbers, and from time to time they ask us to leave or to be and participate, playing the practices against the civilians, against the children, in order to have our
I think it's our speakers.
I'm sorry for the internet.
Do you have questions, Rachel, from your end?
Yes, we do. Please go ahead.
Hello, everyone. Thank you Sari Hanafi from AUB. Thank you so much for this very interesting and moving panel about Gaza. But can we have a kind of overall view on figures? If you like, what are the percentages of those who didn't have scholarity at all, and whether all these schools done in tent is a complete schooling? It means that they can get a certificate, and those who should go to baccalaureate, and then this is my question. Thank you.
Asma or Manar?
Again, apologies, I couldn't hear the question well. It's probably my internet.
Should I repeat it?
Yes, please.
Do you hear? No, yeah. I would like to have a figures. I mean, what is the rate of student schooled so far in Gaza, and those who missed schooling in the last 2 years? I mean, do we have statistics? Is this informal schoolings, I mean, deliver certificate or not?
Yes, as far as I know, because everything is or has collapsed in Gaza, there isn't a good way to monitor or to keep records of enrollment. I can reflect on the ones that are established now. For example, for us at UNRWA, and these are still not official information, this is part of my work with UNRWA. I'm sharing just general information. In some of the safer areas, which is nearly 10% of the Gaza Strip, we have almost 60% to 70% enrollment in formal online education, and around 10% in informal face-to-face UNRWA classes. But again, don't take my word for it. I'm not speaking as a spokesperson on the behalf of UNRWA. This is just from my own experience with the limited workspace that I work in. As for the Gaza Ministry of Education, still they haven't, because I recently got in touch with them for an article. They still do not have records of how many students are enrolled in some of these initiatives. There are records for each initiative, but as a whole, they still haven't managed to bring them together. I understand that my answer does not fully answer your question, but as a general estimate, I would say around 50, give more or less percent of the students currently in Gaza are enrolled in some kind of educational initiative. The bigger part is unfortunately not enrolled because of displacement, lack of access to the internet. But again, this is just a personal estimate. I will refer the panelists to official records once they are provided, and I'm sure they will share it with the audience. Thank you.
Yes. Hello. I have an answer. Thank you for the question again. It's very important to focus on how many children in Gaza have already received the service of education since the 7th of October 2023 till now. Actually, not more than 10% of service since that day till now. Times which are not constant. They are they go to educational tents, and for sometimes for many reasons they don't go. They stop going there because of the danger, because of the diseases is spread among them, especially the diseases of skin, the viruses, the hepatitis, many other dangerous diseases spread among the children, and being displaced from time to time. This makes another challenge for the Ministry of Education decision in the beginning of 2024 studying year. They have made their decision to focus an area of e-learning for the children of Gaza, connected with the teachers from the West Bank. Can you imagine that the children of Gaza do not have the devices they can connect with the teachers in the West Bank or with all over the world? And there is no electricity. The Israeli army has cut the electricity on Gaza exactly on the day, the 12th of October 2023, exactly. And besides, the children of Gaza are suffering from starvation. The service of education, comparing with the service, or let me say, being alive. Okay, having food is at the top of the Gazans now, because they are suffering from a starvation for 2 million people and more after going back to the genocide again in March 2025. It's more and more complicated. I can say that 500% only 500% of the Gazan children have continued receiving the educational service, because it's more and more dangerous and more complicated. There is no safe place at all in Gaza. This means that if a mother or a father wants or to a very near shelter, his sons are going to be in.
It's only here. Speakers here that have the problem. Apologies about this. It's Cambridge Technology failing us, unfortunately. Asma, we can't hear you, unfortunately. Yes.
طيب شكرا كل الموجودين اونلاين ولا بيروت. Okay. Rich session. There is a lot to learn from this discussion.